Have you ever wondered what really goes on in the kitchen of your favorite fast food restaurant? This story will make you think twice before ordering that next burger. I've worked at this fast food place for about 6 months now. It's a McDonald's right in the middle of the city, so we get tons of people, especially during lunch and dinner. Most days, I'm in the kitchen flipping burgers or working the fryer. It's a pretty straightforward job, but the pace can get crazy when the rush hits. I remember one day in particular that started just like any other. The morning was slow, with the usual crowd of regulars grabbing their coffees and breakfast sandwiches before heading to work. I was on the opening shift with a couple of coworkers, Sarah and Mike. We were joking around and trying to wake up with caffeine and the scent of frying hash browns when my manager, Rick, called me over. "Hey, James, we're short-staffed today. Can you stick around for the lunch rush?" he asked. I wasn't thrilled about staying late, but I needed the extra hours. Rent in this city is no joke. "Yeah, sure. No problem," I said. The day went by pretty normally at first. Around noon, the place started filling up, and we were moving fast, trying to keep up with the orders. The rhythm of the kitchen is something else, a dance of sizzling grills, beeping fryers, and shouted orders. It's easy to lose yourself in it, and before you know it, hours have gone by. I was on the fryer, focusing on getting the perfect crisp on the fries when I noticed something weird. Rick, who usually stayed up front managing the orders and dealing with customers, kept disappearing into the back office. He'd come out looking tense, glancing around like he was expecting something, or someone. "Hey, Sarah, have you noticed Rick acting a bit off today?" I asked during a brief lull. "Yeah, he seems on edge. Maybe corporate's doing a surprise inspection or something," she replied, not too concerned. I shrugged it off. Inspections were a part of life here, and we were generally prepared for them. But then, things started to get really strange. By the time 1 p.m. rolled around, we were in full swing. The line was out the door, and the drive-through was stacked with cars waiting for their turn. I was sweating bullets as I tossed basket after basket of fries into the oil, trying to keep up with the demand. Rick was still acting jittery, and every time he slipped into the back, I couldn't help but feel a knot of curiosity tightening in my stomach. As I was refilling the fry station, Mike came over, his expression a mix of excitement and nervousness. "You won't believe what I just saw in the stockroom," he whispered, his eyes darting around to make sure no one was listening. "Rick's got a bunch of boxes stacked up in the back, and they don't look like the usual shipments we get. They've got this weird logo on them." "Weird logo?" I echoed, wiping my forehead with the back of my hand. "Like what?" "I do know, man. They're marked with some company I've never heard of. And it gets stranger. There are security cameras pointed at them, like he's trying to keep an eye on them. But the cameras don't seem like ours either. They're all rigged up in this sketchy way." Now he had my attention. I knew Rick was meticulous about inventory, but this was different. My mind was racing with possibilities. Were we storing some kind of illegal goods? Was Rick involved in something shady? "I'll take a look when I get a chance," I told Mike, trying to sound more confident than I felt. The lunch rush kept me busy, but the thought of those boxes in the back gnawed at me. I needed to know what was going on. So when my break finally came around, I grabbed a bottle of water and casually made my way to the back of the restaurant, acting as if I was just heading for a breather. The stockroom was at the far end of the kitchen, away from the hustle and bustle. I pushed open the door and immediately noticed the boxes Mike had mentioned. They were lined up against the wall, labeled with a name I didn't recognize, Nutriox Corporation. The logo was a simple, almost nondescript circle with 3 arrows pointing outward. The air was cooler in here, the hum of the refrigeration units adding an eerie soundtrack to my exploration. I checked to make sure no one was watching and then knelt down to inspect the boxes. They were sealed tight, but I could see some sort of lock mechanism attached to a couple of them, which was unusual for our typical deliveries. I glanced around and saw the security cameras Mike mentioned, makeshift and almost haphazardly placed. It was as if someone had quickly set them up to monitor this specific area, not caring about the rest of the restaurant. It made me feel uneasy, like we were being watched by some invisible eye. Before I could dig any deeper, I heard the door creak open. My heart jumped into my throat, and I stood up quickly, trying to play it cool. It was Sarah. "James, what are you doing back here?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. I just needed to grab some more napkins for the front," I lied, gesturing towards a random stack of supplies. "Thought I'd make myself useful." She eyed me suspiciously but didn't push it. "Well, hurry up. Rick's been asking about you." I nodded, grabbing a pack of napkins as a cover, and followed her back to the kitchen. But my mind was elsewhere, replaying the images of those boxes and cameras. Whatever was going on, it wasn't normal, and I was determined to find out what Rick was hiding. That evening, as the dinner rush died down, I found myself restless. My mind kept wandering back to the boxes in the stockroom. I needed answers. So, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I caught up with Mike when things slowed down and told him we needed to confront Rick about the boxes. Mike was hesitant at first, but I could see he was just as curious as I was. "I'm with you, man," he finally said, his voice low but determined. "But we gotta be smart about this. Rick isn't the kind of guy you want to corner." We waited until the store closed at 11 p.m. By then, the place was quiet, and the rest of the crew had clocked out. Rick was in the back office, no doubt going over the day's numbers and preparing for tomorrow. The hum of the fluorescent lights filled the empty restaurant as we approached the office door. Mike knocked lightly, and we heard Rick's muffled voice from the other side. "Yeah, come in." We stepped inside, trying to look as casual as two people could when they were about to confront their boss. Rick glanced up from his computer, his eyes narrowing slightly. "What's up, guys?" he asked, sounding distracted. "We wanted to talk to you about something," I began, my voice firmer than I expected. "Those boxes in the stockroom. What's the deal with them?" Rick's expression shifted from confusion to something more guarded. He leaned back in his chair, studying us carefully. "What about them?" he replied, his tone calm but defensive. "They're not from our usual suppliers," Mike added. "And the cameras? They're set up just to watch those boxes." "What's going on, Rick?" For a moment, Rick didn't say anything. The silence stretched out, tense and heavy. Finally, he sighed and stood up, closing the office door behind us. "All right, listen," he said, lowering his voice. "I didn't want to drag you guys into this, but since you're already involved, you deserve to know the truth." Mike and I exchanged a quick glance, bracing ourselves for whatever revelation was coming. "It's nothing illegal," Rick assured us. "At least, not exactly. Those boxes are part of a side business I'm running. Nutriox Corp is a company I'm working with to test out some new products, nutritional supplements, things like that." He paused, gauging our reactions before continuing. "They needed a place to store some of their stock temporarily, and I offered them our stockroom. The cameras are just a precaution to make sure everything stays secure." I wanted to believe him. His explanation made sense on the surface, but something about it didn't sit right with me. "Why didn't you tell us about it before?" I asked. "We could have helped keep an eye on things." Rick shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "I didn't want to burden you guys with it. You've got enough on your plates as it is. Does corporate know about this?" Mike pressed, skepticism etched on his face. Rick hesitated, just for a moment, but it was enough. "They're not directly involved, but it's not against policy. It's a temporary arrangement, that's all." He was trying to sound reassuring, but there was an edge to his voice that betrayed him. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story, something he wasn't telling us. "All right," I said, deciding to let it drop for now. "But if anything seems off, we need to know." "We're a team, right?" Rick nodded, offering a strange smile. Of course. You guys are some of my best workers. I wouldn't want to put you in a tough spot. We left the office feeling only slightly more at ease. Rick's explanation had given us something to hold on to, but the mystery of those boxes still lingered in the air like an uninvited guest. As I walked out into the cool night, I couldn't help but wonder if we'd just scratched the surface of something much deeper. I couldn't stop thinking about the boxes even after getting home that night. Rick's explanation made sense on the surface, but my gut told me there was more to it. I needed more information about Nutriox Corporation, so I decided to do a little digging. The next day, I started my research with a quick online search during my break. Surprisingly, there was almost nothing about Nutriox Corporation. They didn't have an official website, just a few mentions here and there on obscure forums and old press releases. It seemed like they wanted to keep a low profile, which only added to my suspicion. One forum post caught my attention. It was a thread discussing Nutriox Corp's involvement in some sort of controversy a few years back. People were talking about failed product tests and questionable ethics in their business practices. Someone even claimed that Nutriox had been flagged by health regulators for using unapproved ingredients in their supplements. The more I read, the more uneasy I felt. The company seemed to operate in the shadows, and if Rick was involved with them, it could spell trouble. The thread mentioned a former employee of Nutriox who had tried to blow the whistle but disappeared soon after. It was like something out of a conspiracy thriller. "Hey, James, you okay?" Sarah asked, snapping me out of my thoughts. "You've been staring at your phone for a while now." "Yeah, just doing some research," I said, trying to sound nonchalant. "What about?" she inquired, peering over my shoulder. I hesitated, but then I realized I needed all the help I could get. "Remember those boxes we talked about yesterday? I'm looking into the company that made them. Something doesn't add up." Sarah raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. "You really think it's something shady?" "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but there's definitely something weird going on. I found some stuff online that suggests Nutriox Corp isn't exactly on the up and up." I showed her the forum posts, and she read through them quickly, her expression growing more serious with each line. "This is crazy," she said finally, handing my phone back. "Do you think Rick knows what he's getting into?" "I hope not," I replied. "But either way, we need to figure this out. If Nutriox is using us to store illegal products, it could land all of us in serious trouble." The rest of my shift was a blur. My mind was racing with possibilities, each more alarming than the last. I kept going over what I'd read, trying to piece together the puzzle. By the time my shift ended, I had decided to take things a step further. As we locked up for the night, I caught up with Mike and Sarah. "I think we need to check those boxes ourselves," I said, keeping my voice low. "If there's anything suspicious, we'll have proof to show Rick." Mike looked uncertain. "Are you sure about this? If Rick catches us snooping around, we could lose our jobs." "I know it's risky," I admitted, "but I can't shake the feeling that something's wrong. And if we don't do anything, we'll never know for sure." Sarah nodded slowly, determination in her eyes. "I'm in. We need to know the truth, and if it means sneaking around a bit, so be it." Mike sighed, but eventually he nodded too. "All right, let's do it. But we have to be careful. If Rick catches wind of this, we're toast." We made a plan to meet back at the restaurant after closing the following night. The idea was to check out the boxes when no one else was around. As I headed home, a mix of excitement and dread filled me. I was about to uncover a secret that could change everything. The next night, the three of us met outside the restaurant around midnight. The city was quieter at this hour, the usual hustle and bustle replaced by the occasional passing car and the hum of streetlights. My heart was pounding as we approached the back entrance, adrenaline mixed with a sense of dread over what we might find. Mike fumbled with the keys, his hands trembling slightly. "Let's make this quick," he whispered, glancing around nervously. "In and out, all right?" Sarah and I nodded, and we slipped inside. The restaurant was eerily silent, the machines and appliances standing like sentinels in the dim glow of emergency lights. We moved quietly through the kitchen, our footsteps echoing on the tile floor. As we reached the stockroom, a feeling of unease settled over me. The boxes were right where they'd been the other day, lined up against the wall, their labels stark in the dim light. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight, illuminating the scene before us. "There they are," Mike said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do we do now?" "Let's check if we can open one," I suggested, stepping forward. "If there's anything suspicious inside, we'll take photos as evidence." I approached the nearest box and examined the lock mechanism. It wasn't anything fancy, just a simple combination lock. With a bit of luck, I managed to find a paperclip in my pocket and, after a few tense moments of fumbling, popped the lock open. As I lifted the lid, the three of us crowded around, peering inside. At first glance, the box was filled with what looked like ordinary bottles of supplements. But as I picked one up and inspected it, I noticed something unusual. The label was in a language I didn't recognize, and there was no list of ingredients or any official markings. Just the same Nutriox Corp logo I'd seen before. "This doesn't look right," Sarah said, shaking her head. "There's no way these are approved products." We rummaged through the box, finding more of the same. Each bottle was identical, all with the same cryptic labeling. It felt like we'd stumbled onto something big, something that wasn't meant to be found. "Guys, look at this," Mike said suddenly, pulling out a small folder from the bottom of the box. Inside were documents, spreadsheets, and what looked like reports. We spread them out on the floor, trying to make sense of the information. The documents were filled with data on test subjects, chemical compounds, and something called Project Genesis. It was all written in technical jargon, but the gist was clear enough. Nutriox Corp was conducting some sort of experimental testing, and these supplements were part of it. "This is insane," I muttered, flipping through the pages. "They're testing on humans without approval, and they're using us as a storage site for their products." Sarah looked pale, and Mike was visibly shaken. "We have to tell someone about this," Sarah said, her voice firm. "This can't go on." I nodded, feeling the weight of our discovery. But just as we were gathering the documents to take as evidence, we heard footsteps approaching. The sound echoed through the silence, growing louder with each step. "Someone's coming," Mike hissed, panic flashing in his eyes. We quickly put the documents back in the box and locked it, just as the door swung open. Standing there, silhouetted against the light from the hallway, was Rick. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his tone sharp and accusing. We froze, caught red-handed. My mind raced, trying to think of an excuse, but it was too late. Rick's eyes darted from us to the open box, and his expression darkened. "So you found out," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I warned you not to get involved." "Rick, we had to know," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Nutriox is doing something illegal. You can't be a part of this." He stepped forward, his gaze fixed on me. "You don't understand. They have connections. Powerful people who won't hesitate to ruin your lives if you get in their way." "We can't just ignore this," Sarah said, standing her ground. "People's lives are at stake." Rick sighed, rubbing his temples. "You're in over your heads. But I'll make sure you're not dragged into this mess any further. Just go home and forget what you saw. We didn't have much choice." Rick's demeanor made it clear that he wouldn't tolerate any more interference. As we left the stockroom, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. We'd uncovered a dangerous secret, and now we were caught in a web far bigger than we'd imagined. The next few days were a blur. We tried to carry on like everything was normal, but the weight of what we'd discovered hung over us like a dark cloud. Each shift at the restaurant felt like walking on thin ice, with Rick watching us closely, his presence a constant reminder of the danger we'd uncovered. Mike, Sarah, and I met after work, sitting in a small coffee shop, trying to figure out our next move. The unease among us was palpable, a mix of fear and determination that refused to be silenced. "We can't let this slide," Mike said, breaking the silence. "Nutriox is up to something seriously messed up. If we don't do anything, who knows how many people could get hurt?" "I've been thinking about it too," I replied. But Rick made it clear that if we get involved, we're putting ourselves at risk. Sarah sipped her coffee, her brow furrowed in thought. "We could go to the authorities, but without solid evidence, it's our word against theirs. And if they really have connections, they could easily cover their tracks." "Yeah, but we have to try something," Mike insisted. "We can't just sit back and let this happen." As we debated our options, a plan started to form. We knew that going directly to the police without more evidence was risky, but maybe there was another way. Sarah suggested reaching out to a journalist, someone who could investigate Nutriox Corp's operations and bring the truth to light. "There's a guy I know," she said. "He's a reporter for one of those investigative news websites. He's always looking for stories like this, ones that expose corruption and illegal activities." It was a long shot, but it felt like our best option. If we could get someone on the outside to look into Nutriox Corp, it might be enough to force them into the spotlight. We decided to gather as much information as we could and then reach out to Sarah's contact, hoping he'd be willing to take on the story. The following days were a whirlwind of quiet investigations and secret meetings. We took turns sneaking glances at the boxes, photographing documents whenever we got a chance. It was nerve-wracking work, knowing that if we were caught, Rick, and whoever was backing him, would have little patience for our interference. Finally, we had enough. Armed with photos and notes, we sent everything to Sarah's journalist friend, explaining the situation and asking for his help. It was a waiting game now, a tense period of silence where we could only hope that he'd take the bait. It didn't take long for things to escalate. One evening, after a particularly busy shift, we received a message from the journalist. He was interested and was already digging into Nutriox Corporation. He promised to keep us in the loop and let us know if he uncovered anything significant. The following week was tense, each day dragging on as we waited for news. Rick was acting more agitated than usual, a sign that he might have sensed our involvement in something he couldn't control. But we kept our heads down, focusing on our work and trying to act as normal as possible. Then, one night, just as I was about to leave the restaurant, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from the journalist. "Big news. Nutriox Corp is under investigation. Authorities raided their main facility this morning. Your info was the missing link. More to come. Stay safe." A mix of relief and anxiety washed over me. We'd done it. We'd set the wheels in motion for Nutriox to face justice. But now, with the spotlight on them, it was only a matter of time before the fallout reached us. The next day, the news broke. Headlines blared the story of Nutriox Corp's illegal activities, their unapproved testing, and the dangerous products they'd been distributing. Rick was nowhere to be seen, and by the time we clocked in for our shifts, the restaurant was buzzing with rumors. It turned out that Rick had disappeared, leaving behind a mess of paperwork and unanswered questions. Nutriox's connections were slowly unraveling, their operations exposed for the world to see. It was a satisfying conclusion, but it left us with a lingering sense of unease. Despite the relief of seeing justice served, I couldn't shake the feeling of looking over my shoulder. The memory of those days in the stockroom, the fear and uncertainty, remained etched in my mind. Mike, Sarah, and I agreed to stay in touch, watching each other's backs in case of any lingering threats. Life at the restaurant eventually returned to normal, but I knew I'd never look at it the same way again. The experience changed me, reminding me of the dangers hidden beneath the surface of ordinary life. In the end, we'd uncovered a shocking truth and stood up against a powerful entity, but the scars of that battle lingered, a reminder that sometimes, The real horrors aren't found in haunted houses or creepy sounds, but in the shadows of our everyday world.